Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting for November 8, 2023 to order. The time is now 7:01. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, item C is our roll call. Council members, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Councilmember Brocksmith.
Here.
Councilmember Correas.
Here.
Councilmember Hudson.
Here.
Councilmember Holst.
Here.
Councilmember Molinar.
Here.
Councilmember Morales.
Here.
All right, thank you. Under community comments, item 1 is a review of emails from the public. I'll ask staff if we had any emails submitted to the email address communitycomments@mountvernon.gov.
Thank you, Mayor. No, we did not.
All right, thank you. Item 2 is public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak tonight in the audience? You're welcome to step forward. And seeing none, we'll move along. Consent agenda is items A, B, C, and that's it. That's regular council meeting minutes, payroll checks, direct deposit checks, wire transfers, and claims.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Juan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Under committee reports tonight, we have 3. So first up is Public Works Committee and Public Works and Library Committee and Councilmember Gary Molinar.
Okay, we opened up the meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, and after the approval of the previous 2 meetings, we approved the minutes. And first up, we had a fireworks ordinance discussion, and Kevin Rogerson, our city attorney, presented that draft on fireworks ordinance to the council. It was decided to look into this and possibly adopt at another regular meeting, so we're kind of moving forward with that. Second, we did a camping ordinance discussion. That was continued from a previous one that we had a little bit last week in prior, and so it is, that will also be on tonight's regular agenda. And then we moved into a draft budget discussion. We kind of ran out of time a little bit, so we're gonna probably try to continue that. And actually, we recessed the meeting at 6:57 with the possibility to continue the meeting after the regular city council meeting tonight.
All right, thank you, Gary. Item 2 is our Public Safety Committee report, and that's Councilmember Mark Olson.
Good evening. We had our Public Safety Committee meeting last Wednesday, November 1st. I'm going to repeat some of what Councilmember Molinar said because that's how our agenda went. We had a discussion about fireworks. There's several members of the council and several members of the public that have expressed an interest in seeing a full-out ban on fireworks in Mount Vernon. There's been some discussion about how we would implement that, how it would affect those that follow the rules now and those that don't. And really, we came down to a decision of possibly having a 3-year trial period on the ban. So it would, if it was to pass, it would be a 3-year and then sunset out unless a future council took action. That will be put on the agenda in the coming weeks, and there will be a public or a council vote on that before the end of the year. We then had our discussion about the camping ordinance, as Councilmember Molinar referred or alluded to earlier. That is actually docketed, and will be action will be taken on that this evening by council. We then had a discussion about an agreement with Gelada. Gelada is an information sharing software. It works with healthcare, EMS, law enforcement, behavioral health, social services, and other organizations. And it's really a tool for those organizations to be able to utilize and find services that are available for some of the most vulnerable in our community. And it also is easily transferred back and forth, and it doesn't violate any of the HIPAA laws. So that's an agreement that'll be on our docket this evening. And council will be acting on that. We also had a discussion about North Star and putting an agreement together amongst the leadership team as mayors change out and different folks in the leadership role. We wanted to kind of solidify that leadership group so they can continue to work on that. That's an agreement between Mount Vernon, Burlington, Cedar Woolley, and Anacortes. And again, that's on the agenda tonight for action. And then we spent the rest of our evening discussing budget and potential, where our revenues are gonna come from, where some of the expenses are coming from, and areas that we may be able to offset costs versus versus revenue. And we adjourned about 8:33.
All right, thank you, Mark. Next up is Development Services Committee report, and that's Councilmember Melissa Beaton. Melissa?
Thank you, Mayor. So we had a Development Services Committee meeting on October 18th. The first item on our agenda was parking space requirements for new single-family homes. Development Services Director, Ms. Preschner, provided council with an overview of parking space requirements for new single-family home developments in the city's residential zones, including the history of legislation leading up to the current code requirements. After her presentation, I asked council if they had any questions, and seeing none, we moved on. The next item was code amendments to consider eliminating the Design Review Board. Director Preschner provided an overview of the design review regulatory background. The proposed design review process we have been considering for some time eliminates the Design Review Board and includes a community conference hosted by the applicant with public notice given. A report of the results of the meeting will then be submitted by the applicant when they make the application to the city for permits. I then asked council if they had any comments or concerns. There were no concerns voiced, so that is coming up soon on our December, I think, council meeting. Next up, Ms. Preschner gave us an update on some things going on in the department. First, we talked about, has to do with the 2023 docket. There is a status of an amendment, including the Shoreline Master Program. We are waiting on a review by the Department of Ecology, so that's on hold. The waterfront sub-area plan is something that staff is looking to us for guidance, and so we'll be considering that at some point. And then land use, building, and other code amendments continue with proposed sign code and wireless update to comply with federal regulations. And we may need to give that last one there prioritization with a temporary resolution because, so that the code aligns with changes to the federal regulations. And then we received the last and final, nope, it's not the final item. Next item was developer and director meetings, and Ms. Preschner has been meeting with the development community to discuss issues including parking, density, affordable housing, and permit numbers. Based on their input, she is suggesting council consider changes to performance standards in some of the codes. And then we had I think we might have kicked off our 2024 budget discussion. Director Valesky gave an overview of the preliminary budget, which is broken down into discretionary and non-discretionary items. We received our annual budget binder and did a quick overview of important items. And of course, since that time, we've discussed in every meeting since then items for the council to consider in budgeting. Finally, council asked staff to look into the possibility of using 1590 funds for Oasis Teen Shelter, which we have now done. We also discussed using banked capacity and what that would look like in 10 years. Council inquired about the possibility of keeping our levy rate the same, and so we are considering that. And with that, our meeting adjourned at 7:32.
All right, thank you so much. Moving on, item D tonight, is any council member comments? Any council member comments tonight?
I do have one comment.
Go ahead, please.
So I am the rep, if you will, for the chair of the Development Services Committee meeting. And I just wanted to make sure that my colleagues realize that it's not a dictatorship. So if you want something on this committee, all you need to do is make a request. You'll see it later on in our agenda here this evening. It's been a long day. And just like I did recently, to explore eliminating fireworks, a complete fireworks ban, if you will, in the city. I'm not the chair of the public safety, but I did make that request, and we then did study it. And if they don't come through in this venue, you can always email, and we will get those items on the agenda.
All right,
That's it.
thank you. Any other council member comments tonight? Okay, moving on to mayor's report. So as always, a construction update for Mount Vernon Library Commons project. First up, this photo here is showing on the roof, which is parking on the roof. It's not like a traditional roof, I guess. And here we're installing cable barrier system and mechanical and electrical rough, and that's in progress. That's on the very top. The next slide will show some of the mock-ups that have been installed and reviewed by the design team, such as the windows, so making sure that that's what we ordered and what we needed. Exterior brick facade, which a lot of folks are now seeing it, it's gotten kind of high there on the Red Apple side. Interior insulation, and the very first EV charger has been installed as a mock-up. And so the next slide, go ahead. So you can see all the things that are internal to the structure and that first EV charger there. The main focus of the work for the rest of November is on the first floor build out and the exterior brick cladding. So that's what folks will be seeing as they drive by the Commons project. Veterans Day is coming up, and so we've prepared a video to thank not only our city employees, but our community, and so we're gonna play a brief video now. So, thanks, Peter.
Hello, I am Mayor Jill Boudreau, and I send a hearty thank you to our Mount Vernon veterans and their families. I met my Marine on January 26, 1989, in a restaurant called The Holy Cow. I was 22 years old. He was standing along the wall of the dance floor next to me, and we started chatting randomly. I am proud to be married to Gunnery Sergeant retired Dan Boudreau. Veterans and their families have a unique life. Long separations, moving frequently, base housing, worldwide conflicts that your loved ones serve in, living abroad, being hundreds of miles away from family, navigating indescribable anxiety and tight budgets. Veterans and their families also have unique perspectives that include the deep reverence for our flag, emotion when the national anthem plays, the joy and deep connection that only you and I have experienced with fellow military members. The feeling of that first embrace after a 6-month deployment, the strength that those who serve find within themselves, and the resilience that develops over time. We celebrate those who have worn our nation's uniform in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. This Veterans Day, we pause to honor those who have given of themselves in defense of our Constitution, freedom, and democracy. Thank you, veterans.
All right, and just a few things. We do have a veterans food drive that's ongoing that our Parks Department has put together, so if you're interested in donating there. And then there's some volunteer projects for veterans, more yard cleanup, things like that. So please contact the mayor's office or the Parks Department if you'd like to get involved this weekend. So, all right. Moving on, item D tonight is committee agenda requests. Any committee agenda requests? All right, moving on. There is no unfinished business. Tonight, first up under new business is item A, and that is a public hearing. This is to amend this Community Development Block Grant, so we're CDBG program for years 2018 to 2019, 2020 to 21, 2021 to 22, and 2022 to 2023. Peter Donovan is here to present. Peter.
Thank you, Mayor. And now that I have your complete attention, Council, this is the item that was presented to you on October 4th. So this is that housekeeping item that addresses cleanup of past CDBG annual action plans where proposed uses have changed or a change in the use of funds from one eligible activity to another exceeds 10% of the total current CDBG allocation. These substantial amendments were publicly posted for comment on October 10th, and that comment period ended today. So at this point, no comments have been received. I am prepared to provide you with an overview of all 5 of these in some detail if you wish, by request, I suppose. Otherwise, staff is recommending that council approve this substantial amendment for the city CDBG program following an open record public hearing.
All right, any questions for Peter before we open the hearing? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing regarding the amendment to the CDBG block grant program for 4 sets of years ranging from 2018 to 2023. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this particular item? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing regarding this item. And council, you have questions? Would you like Peter to go over all of these details, or would you like to take action?
I think we've had discussion on this prior, and it's just basic housekeeping. So I would move the approval of the amendment to the CDBG block grant fund.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mark and a second by Richard. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Item B tonight is a public hearing and approval of an ordinance. This is a rezone parcel P 82422, and it's also a plan number within the city of Plan 23-0166. Stacy Pratchner, our Development Services Director, is here to present.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, Stacy. Just wanted to note for the record that I'm Chair of the Board of Community Action, and given that this is a quasi-judicial record hearing and decision, I plan to recuse myself, and it seems like it makes sense from the city attorneys to also leave the room so that you guys can have a full and fair discussion without me being involved. So if you don't mind, take no offense, please. I'm just going to excuse myself.
All right.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you very much. All right.
All right. Very good. So good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Always my pleasure to present to council. So the first item from Development Services this evening is a request for the council to consider approving a site-specific rezone request from Community Action of Skagit. The department would respectfully request that council hold a closed record public hearing and consider a motion to accept the hearing examiner's recommendation to approve a rezone request from Community Action. So this evening, I'd like to give a brief description of the request. We'll review the state and local regulatory context for the application. We'll review the proposal's procedural, legal, and factual compliance with code. And then we'll outline the options for council if it's your pleasure to take action this evening. So before we review the application, and as we just heard, site-specific rezones are quasi-judicial, and that means that we are in a court-like setting, and the council is acting as judge and will weigh evidence. This also means the appearance of fairness doctrine applies. That's the rule of law that requires government decision-makers to conduct non-court hearings and proceedings in a way that is both fair and unbiased in both appearance and fact. I'm sure you've heard this speech from Mr. Rogerson many a time. So at this time, I would ask if there is any other council members who need to declare any conflict of interest or bias to go ahead and report any ex parte contact on that matter, and there may be a need for recusal.
Any other council members feel they have a conflict? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this request is for a zoning classification, or zoning reclassification, but it does not require an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan. So in other words, in the city of Mount Vernon, the city has a number of land use designations, and then there are multiple receiving zones for each of those land use designations. So for purposes of this application, the request is to shift from one residential zone, the R-3, to another that still keeps the new zone, R-4, in that same land use box of residential use. And in this case, this is a land use designation of medium high density, hence why it's called site-specific. The subject site is located in the north central part of the city. It's approximately 1.5 acres in size. It's bound by Culshan Avenue to the south and then LaVenture to the east. The site is currently undeveloped. It is surrounded by residential development to the east, some commercial development to the west, and then you'll see that the remainder of the area supports a similar mix of uses. Community Action has requested that the zoning shift, again, from R3 to R4, and then this would increase the allowable density on the lot up to 20 units per acre versus the 15 units per acre that's currently allowed under the R3. So in this case, and as we know with quasi-judicial applications, the application must meet the procedural, legal, and factual requirements of both state and local law. So this slide demonstrates the timeline and also demonstrates the application's procedural compliance with our code. We have the submittal of the application, we have the notice of complete application, which creates vesting. We did the public notice appropriately, along with the SEPA determination. An open record hearing was held before the hearing examiner, where the recommendation was made for city council. And now we're here this evening for the closed record hearing, where it's council's pleasure to deliberate and take action. So just a brief reminder of the regulatory context that we're in. The decisions that land use decisions that can be made generally fall into three categories: the legislative, quasi-judicial, and the administrative ministerial. Even though legislative is highlighted, because I didn't change it before the hearing, we are in the quasi-judicial part of the decision tree, if you will. And so fundamental decisions about what's allowed on the parcel have already been made, and the performance standards have already been made. And so the decision then is a legal one. How and does the application comply with all the applicable regulations? So the hearings examiner, as you can see in the material record that was provided, has found that the application is procedurally, legally, and factually compliant with the Mount Vernon Municipal Code, the comprehensive plan, that it was duly noticed, and there are conditions that are recommended by the hearing examiner that have been included in the draft ordinance for your consideration. So next steps for City Council. The code offers the City Council 4 options: to approve the hearing examiner's recommendation and approve the rezone, to conditionally approve the hearing examiner's recommendation, i.e. if it's appropriate and within constitutional constraints, add additional conditions, to deny the recommendation and application, or to remand the application back to the hearing examiner. I thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the hearing examiner's recommendation.
Okay. Any questions for Stacy? Go ahead, Mark.
So Stacy, just to clarify, this is just rezoning that particular property. It's not approving any future development. It's only authorizing it to move to an R4, which will allow for a little higher density.
That's absolutely correct, council member, and thank you for bringing that up. When and if the rezone takes place, there would still be a requirement for submittal of development applications to develop the property. And at that time, the city would analyze traffic impacts, need for stormwater mitigation, protection of critical areas, and then all the bulk and dimensional standards that would go along with the development.
Okay. And it seems to me that there's some adjoining properties that are more of that medium density, that R4. So
Yes.
this is really consistent with the surrounding properties.
Yes, exactly, council member. You have a mix of uses and densities that surround the property, and this would look substantially similar if community action develops it at that 20 units per acre.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Stacy? There is a public hearing, so anything else? Okay, we'll open the public record hearing for the approval of the ordinance regarding a rezone parcel P82422. Is anyone here that wishes to speak? And the applicant would be, this would be closed record, so if the applicant was here, they would be the only ones that would speak, correct? All right.
believe the applicant is.
All right, then we'll close the public hearing regarding this particular action. Council, this would be an ordinance. It would be ordinance 3875, if you would like to take action tonight.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council move to adopt ordinance 3875.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. A motion by Melissa and a second by Gary. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. And perhaps Fire Chief could let Councilmember Brocksmith know that we are through that item. That would be great. and we'll pause for just a minute. Alrighty, moving on to item C, it is a public hearing and approval of a resolution. This is a plat approval of Mountain Gate subdivision. This is plan number 23-0064, and again, Stacy Pratchner is here to deliver this item to us.
Yes.
It's kind of a way to
Yes,
say
I
that.
am. Yep, exactly.
Welcome, Susie.
So thank you so much, Madam Mayor and Council Member. So the second item from Development Services this evening is a request for City Council to consider approving a preliminary request, a preliminary plat request. I apologize, it's been a long day, from D.R. Horton. And to consider a motion to accept the hearing examiner's recommendation to approve that preliminary plat request. So this evening, I'll give a brief description of the request. Again, like the rezone, we're going to review the state and local regulatory context that the application is subject to. We'll also review its procedural, legal, and factual compliance with state and local code. And then we'll outline the options for council if it's your pleasure to take action this evening. So some of this will sound very familiar. So before we review the application again, this is a quasi-judicial decision, and that means we're in a court-like setting, and the appearance of fairness doctrine applies. So I'll go ahead and ask the same question of council, that at this time there's any members of the council who need to declare conflict of interest or bias, and to report that ex parte communication on this matter, and that may necessitate the need for recusal.
All right, any council member feel that they need to have a conflict? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to repeat, the request for the preliminary plat is to subdivide an approximately 12.7 acre site currently undeveloped and create 66 new residential lots that will be accompanied by public and private infrastructure that will serve those new lots. The subject site is located in the southern part of the city, and it's approximately bound by East Blackburn Road to the south and then developments to the north. Now, the site is surrounded currently by less dense residential development to the east and west. You can see from the map that there's a little more dense single-family residential development to the north. This slide demonstrates the preliminary plat layout. You can see that D.R. Horton is proposing 46 detached single-family lots, and those will vary in size. They'll go up to about 7,000 square feet for the larger ones. There's going to be 10 duplex lots, and then there are 17 individual tracts. Now, those tracts, like Tract D, support infrastructure. For example, that is where the stormwater facility is going to be placed. You can see that there's other tracts in green. Those are going to support vegetated buffers, some open space, and then there's also environmental protection anticipated with tracts K and J with a buffer from an off-site wetland. You can also see that new public roads, currently named Road A and Road B, are going to be constructed to serve the new homes and the development. The residential lots currently, like I said, largest one's going up to about 7,000. The smaller ones will be around 2,300 square feet. The site zoning is the R-14, and so we're in that similar zoning that we were talking about with the rezone that was just recommended for approval by council. And so in this case, D.R. Horton did opt to use the Affordable Housing Code to increase the density, which would have been 44 units to up to 66 units. Approximately 7 of the units on site are going to be affordable. That means that those folks are going to, the applicants will record a covenant with the city, and then those homes will remain permanently affordable. D.R. Horton hasn't indicated yet to the city which of the homes are going to be put into that category. That'll be a business decision for them to make, but we know that the number is 7 at this point. As the council is well aware, one of the tenets of the Growth Management Act when it comes to subdivisions and new development of any kind is that developers pay the cost of their development. And developers do that in a couple different ways when they submit for preliminary plat approval and go into construction plan approval. They do go ahead and install the infrastructure they need, which in this case that has been approved. They will have connection to sewer, connection to water. They're going to have sufficient storm water. And they're also going to be doing frontage improvements as well. And frontage improvements means that along South 30th and East Blackburn Road, there's going to be improvements that are going to improve the road, add sidewalk right there. I would like to note that you'll see that there was a request for reconsideration from the applicant with this plat. If you'll see on the lower left-hand side, there's a section that says not part of this plat. There's a small section there where frontage improvements are not going to be installed. However, those improvements are in the city's CIP and will be built at a future date. And the hearing examiner has recommended that that condition is appropriate for the plat to go forward. All right, again, similar to the rezone, we have procedural compliance that needs to be met with any quasi-judicial application. And so this slide demonstrates the timeline as well as that compliance. The date of submittal, the time when the open record hearing was completed with the hearing examiner, and of course our compliance with the noticing requirements, including the notice of application and the SEPA threshold determination. And then the closed record hearing this evening. And again, we're in that same regulatory context. Councilmember, you were out of the room, but just noting I didn't take the highlight off the legislative, but it belongs on the quasi-judicial. That's the category that we're in. Fundamental planning decisions have already been made. And so this application is an analysis of does it meet those requirements. The hearing examiner, as you can see in the material record before you, has found that the application is procedurally, legally, and factually compliant with state and local code, those applicable. And at this point, the City Council has the following options. The council may approve the hearing examiner's recommendation and approve the preliminary plat, conditionally approve it, deny the recommendation application, or remand the application back to the hearing examiner. Staff concurs with the hearing examiner's recommendation that, and we would respectfully request that the City Council consider approving the preliminary plat. I thank you for your attention and your time. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the hearing examiner's recommendation.
All right, questions before our public hearing? Go ahead, Melissa.
Stacy, is this the first real use of our affordable housing code in a development?
Yeah, thank you for that question, council member. I would have to research that question and get back to you. I think it is one of the first. If I recall, the affordable housing density bonus was adopted by the city pretty recently.
Yeah.
This is where being the new
21
person is my
maybe.
disadvantage.
I believe it's the first one that's come through
Was
for
substantial.
approval. There was one on Section Street, that multifamily, that was going to be utilizing it, but I don't think it's gotten that far
Okay.
to come to council,
Okay,
if I recall.
Yeah,
But it is one of the first.
that's great.
thank you.
That's a great mention, council member, and a great thing to highlight with this application.
Okay, Juan, go ahead.
Thanks. With this matter, the hearing examiner recommended conditional approval of the application, and then a request for reconsideration was also filed. Could you walk us how all that went and sort of the meat of that matter specifically?
Yes,
Yeah.
certainly. Luckily enough, even though I'm new, I was present at that particular public hearing and can give the real life, laydown of how that happened. So originally, the recommendation from the city is that those frontage improvements would extend across that parcel. And let me bring that up on the map again. The parcel that's noted is not part of the plat. It currently supports a single-family residence right there. So the recommendation was full frontage improvements along that line. So the owners of the home had some concerns about those frontage improvements being installed in front of their property. The home that is supported on that lot right now, it's fairly close to the road, and the construction improvements would be quite close to their windows and to their home. And so the hearing examiner wanted to consider their request, and D.R. Horton took the neighbor's concern into consideration as the developer, and they requested a reconsideration of the city's requirement. And then the hearing examiner made a decision that, yes, he deemed it appropriate and still compliant with law, that those frontage improvements could happen at a later date, i.e. as part of the city's capital improvement plan and what we would do later. And so that is the condition that is placed on the permit right now, and staff concurs with that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions we do over here? Okay, all right, we'll open the, it's a closed record, I was saying. We'll open the closed record, public hearing regarding this, plat approval for Mountain Gate subdivision. Is there anyone of record that would like to speak? And seeing none, we will close the closed record public hearing. I think this was a quick, I don't know if everyone knows, this is a resolution. Okay, great. So if council doesn't have any other questions for Stacy, it would be a resolution, 1045, if you would like to take action.
Wasn't the last one a resolution?
1045.
I'd move the adoption of resolution 1045.
All right, thank you.
Second.
All right, motion by Mark and a second by Mary. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members.
All right, item D tonight is a public hearing on the 2024 city budget revenue sources. So Doug Valesky, our finance director, is here to present this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. All right, just briefly here, talk about our calendar, our budget calendar. So November 8th is kind of a busy day. We had a preliminary, another work session earlier today during committee, and also the copies of the preliminary budget have been made available to the public on our website. So currently, right now, what we're going to do is we're going to have a public hearing for the revenue sources, including for consideration of and we won't have any make any motions tonight. Just informative. So
You never know.
with that, so part of the city budget process is to establishing a revenue estimates for the budget year and make sure that they fall within the city's revenue policies. So again, just looking at our revenue policies, they are, current revenues will be sufficient to support the current expenditures, calculated using an objective analytical process, and will be neither overly optimistic nor overly conservative. And estimates will be performed utilizing accepted analytical techniques and shall access the full spectrum of resources available to finance city programs and services. So this is a process that involves a lot of people and a lot of different resources, and we have get a lot of information from management input. The main one is just historical information and trends. We have revenue guides from MRSC. We work with some of the stuff, information that we get from the state, and just input from other organizations. Just really briefly, just was going to mention here, this is one of a quarterly review that comes out from the Economic and Revenue Forecast Council. And this is the last one that was done. It was September 26th of 23. And just a few things I'm just going to point out is that here they say that they expect nominal personal income growth in 2024 through 2027 to average 5% per year. There was also a surplus in revenue, and most of that surplus was in the property tax, sales taxes, and then they're just from their forecast from one quarter to the next just shows that how it's been that they've increased it. And this top chart right here just kind of shows for Washington personal income, it was higher compared to their June forecast, and which was the blue lines and out through 2027. And now what they did in September, it's a little increased higher and next to that. So, these are all just some of the things that we look at. There in the conclusion, there are some risks. There's, again, this was done in September. There were, still rising interest rates. There's the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and then potential federal government shutdowns at that point and still exist. So there's still some risks involved. But total state revenues are expected to grow 3% between the 2021-23 and 23-25 biennia, and 6.3% between the 23-25 and 25-27 biennium. So just a few things, places that we look at to get some resources. So overall, right now, the 2024 estimated city revenues that are included in the preliminary budget is $113,634,614. This is made up of, and this is a comparison to what, not from last year's budget, but from what we expect to receive this year in 2023. So total city revenues, taxes for a 24 budget is estimated to be at $32.379 million. Pretty much very close to what we're bringing in this year, about $37,000 more, and I'll go into that in the next slide over taxes. Other financial sources, $34.4 million. This is mainly due to our capital funds and some of the resources that are coming in for, like, we get the TIFIA loan, the short-term bond anticipation note, some of the revenues from that, et cetera. Charges for services are for mainly our utilities and ambulance transports and impact fees, et cetera. We're looking at about $27 million there, about $1.1 million over what we're planning on expecting and collecting in '23. Miscellaneous revenues, which are our interfund charges for services, leases, rents, et cetera, about 7.8 million. Intergovernmental services at 9.6 million. Again, those are, majority of those are coming in from Washington and federal grants for our capital projects. License and permits, 1.4 million. Other income at 450, which is mainly our wastewater connection fees. We have non-revenues, which are from our fiduciary funds, where, you know, it's what we bring in goes right back out, about 232,000, and then fines and forfeits for 178,000. So again, that was a total of $113.6 million, about $6 million more than we're projecting on collecting this year. But just to note, it's about 9.8 million less than what we had budgeted in 2023. But again, it was just mainly some of the capital revenues that we were expecting didn't come in as early as we had anticipated. With that, looking at the '24 estimated total city taxes at $32,379,998. We're looking at sales tax of about 9.7 million. We're projected and bringing in at least 9.9 this year. Might even hit that $10 million mark, but we did a little conservative and brought that down about 2% or $200,000 and for budgeting for next year. Property tax at 8.6. I'll get into that one in the next few slides, so I'm going to go from there. Public safety, criminal justice, and TBD, those are all, you know, kind of like the sales tax collected, pretty much staying about where they are. We have affordable and supportive housing. This is for both our 1405 and 1590 monies coming in. We're estimated about $1.2 million this year. Hotel motel, about 314. All our utility and other miscellaneous revenue taxes are about just right about $5 million. Again, not looking at hardly any increase there at all, keeping it pretty consistent. Our lift money, that's our that's all we can bring in is $500,000, so that's why that is there. And then REIT, we have estimated about 1.5 million, which I'll talk about in a bit here too. We're estimating that coming in about 1.3 this year, so there is a little increase anticipated for next year. But overall, our taxes on a almost $32.4 million budget, we're only going up by about $38,000. So no big amounts there. Just a little, just a reminder about the levy and our property taxes. As part of the budget process, the taxing jurisdiction establishes the amount of property tax revenue needed to fund the budget. That amount needed to fund the budget is called the levy. It is the total amount to be collected from the taxpayers by a taxing district. In Washington, property tax increases are not based on the increasing value of the properties. They are based on last year's property tax levy, which is simply the amount of the property taxes that were assessed in the prior year. So looking at where we were last year, in 2023, our assessed value was just under $5.5 billion. We had new construction with a value of about $21.6 million, which brought in taxes of about $38,000. Our bank capacity from unused 1% was $864,000, and so our 2022 levy amount was just over $8.5 million, with a levy rate of 1.5631. So this year in 2024, our preliminary assessed value, assessed value was $5.7 billion. This is about 4.5% higher than it was last year. Our new construction assessed value was only $12 million, so we brought in about $19,000. The 1% allowable implicit price deflator, as long as that's over 1%, the cities can collect, add 1% to their levy. This year it was 3.67, so I did include that 1% in the amounts in the preliminary budget. And then bank capacity available is $684,000, and then the 2023 requested levy amount that's in the preliminary budget is $8.6 million, which decreases that levy rate down to 1.5146. Any questions on any of that before I move on?
I guess I do have a question. So Doug, at this, setting the levy rate at 1.5146, that means that we have to sacrifice several positions, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
To balance the budget, yes. So just a little history again on our property taxes. You can see looking at the middle of that green chart there, the levy rate in 2015 at $2.847, down to right now it's estimated at 1.5. So this is the lowest rate that I can't say history, I haven't been here that long, but as far as I can see, it's the lowest rate that I've ever seen in reports. As you can see, there's a correlation there as far as the assessed value, that copper or that orange line, as assessed value goes up, that levy rate goes down, and then so there's you'll see that will continue to be happening as long as assessed values are going up. So getting into our sales tax rate, first of all, just a reminder that our sales tax rate in Mount Vernon is 8.8%. The city is the 0.85% or 10% of that total amount. Almost 75% of that goes to the state of Washington. So out of that 8.8, only 10% of it comes back to the city. So looking at some history on our sales tax revenues, so sales tax numbers have increased 113% since 2010, and 33% growth in just the last 5 years. So you can see over here on the left how since 2010 they were 4.7 million. This year we're planning on bringing in almost $10 million. So that bar graph just keeps going up, and so that's good news. Let's just hope it continues in that movement. So for 2024, this amount right here is 9.7. You just can't read it correctly. No, that 22 or 9.2 was actually the budget for 2023. The budget for 2023 was 9.2. We're projecting on bringing at least 9.9, and the estimate that we have in here is about a 2% decrease from what we're planning on bringing in. So that's that $9.7 million. So that's where we're projecting for the sales tax. Any questions on sales tax at all? All right. Real estate excise tax, a little less predictable, as you can see here on the graph. Our estimates for 23 and 24 are lower. We're looking at about $1.3 million for 23 and 1.5 in 24. But neither of those years, well, of course, this year we're kind of running out of time, but they're in a conservative range, and they don't account for any large sales that could potentially happen throughout the year. So you see that a lot where, your numbers are getting down and all of a sudden there's a major sale and then there's a big jump. So as you can see here, it's been pretty inconsistent. Good thing is the trend line is still going up, so that's good. But I think our estimates for 2024 are conservative numbers. So any questions on?
I just have a comment on this. It's more for the public's knowledge. This real estate excise tax, that's not calculated into basically our operation budget. This is for either half of it goes into capital improvements, and the other half goes into our transportation fund. And so those dollars really aren't spent until they're garnered in. So if we don't hit those projections, we're not really out anything. It's once we collect those, then we can make decisions on how they're going to be expended. So we may be able to do, air conditioning in one of our buildings or that needs to be replaced, or we may be able to do an extra mile of paving when we do our overlay project. So this particular fund isn't spent until the money's received, and then we can allocate it out. So it's not an operations fund.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Holst. That's an excellent point, and you're absolutely right. None of this money goes into operations. It's all for capital projects and as needed. So, and it's not spent if we don't have it. It doesn't hit any of our operational or any general fund money. So it can't be used for any operationals. All right. And just to touch on some other major city revenues, the first three here, we have our sewer service fees, our solid waste collection fees, and our drainage utility fees. All three of those have recently, in the past recent years, have had rate studies done on them. And at this point, all of them are increased by CPI per what was approved in the rate ordinances. Ambulance services, this one, the ambulance services, the EMS SDA, that's the EMS levy that we receive. So that's a true amount that we'll be receiving in there. Ambulance services, we have estimated for transports pretty close to what they've been coming in or this past year. Not any major increases in there. Our ground emergency medical transports, that number is based, this 1.17 number is based on transports from this year, but it's on a federal fiscal year, so we already know what those numbers are, so that's a good number there also. Building related permits, have them pretty much staying the same as what we're estimating it's going to be from this year, about $20,000 less. These next three here, the motor vehicles fuel tax for city streets, that's about $650,000. The liquor board profits of $268,000, and the liquor excise tax of $257,000. Those are straight state funds coming to us. They tell us what those amounts will be, and so those are exact amounts that we'll be receiving. Business license, we have it estimated at staying pretty much the same at $155,000, and then same with the marijuana excise tax distribution. So these are the other major city revenues that come to about $26.7 million. So with that, if anybody has any questions on any of the estimates?
Any questions for Doug on the revenue? All right, with that, we'll open the public hearing regarding the 2024 city budget revenue sources. I'm going to turn on my mic, so I'm going to say it again. We'll open the public hearing for the 2024 city budget revenue sources. Is there anyone here that would wish to speak on this particular item? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and that takes care of some of our obligations in our budget process, correct, Doug?
That's correct.
All right, is council interested in taking any action tonight? Seeing none, we're moving along to the next agenda item. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. As always, council, please reach out to Doug if you have any questions about that between now and the next council meeting. All right, item E is the approval of an agreement with Siemens Corporation. Chris Phillips, our Public Works Director, is here for this item. Chris.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council. City staff recommends City Council authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Siemens for a previously City Council approved ARPA expenditure of $267,094. Public Works General Facility staff recommends the installation of heat recovery ventilators and energy recover ventilators into the current library facility to enhance air exchange systems that will increase indoor air quality and minimize heating costs. The project will supplement the existing HVAC system and increase its efficiency and effectiveness well beyond its current limits and increase HVAC system life expectancy an additional 20 years. City staff recommends City Council authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Siemens for this project.
All right, questions for Chris on this item?
I motion for the approval for mayor to enter an agreement with Siemens for $224,267.94.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Juan, a second by Melissa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, item F tonight is an improvement of an agreement with commercial cold storage. Again, Chris Phillips is here. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. City staff recommends City Council authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with commercial cold storage from October 2023 to October 2024 for the annual rate of $4,366.56, and then to go on a month-to-month option to follow for the monthly rate of $374.79. City staff, again, recommends the council authorize the mayor to enter this agreement with commercial cold storage.
Right. Any questions for Chris? Mark, go ahead.
So Chris, this is kind of a temporary contract. It's an extension from what we're already doing, but the reason we have this in place is to provide parking for folks parking that was lost when we redid the revampment, did the waterfront project. Once we have the parking garage completed, we'll no longer need that additional parking space, and we'll terminate this contract, correct?
That is correct.
With that, I'll move the adoption of the agreement with commercial cold storage.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mark and a second by Carrie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chris. All right, item G tonight is an approval of an agreement with Daniel Salas. And this is Jennifer Berner, our Parks and Enrichment Services Director, is here for this. Jennifer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff requests approval to renew the Vokes House apartment lease agreement. Upon review of rental property rates in Mount Vernon, staff is recommending the rent remain the same for 2024. The rental rate is $1,050 a month. $600 is deducted for their caretaker duties, and the remaining being $450 is what they pay for the rental of that unit. Staff is requesting council to authorize the mayor to enter into a rental agreement for the Vokes House apartment. If there's any questions, happy to answer those.
All right, questions for Jennifer on this item?
I
Jennifer,
d-
how long has Daniel been there? Sorry. I think he's been there-
He
Sorry,
has
put you on the
been
spot.
there probably close to 9 years.
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay,
and he's done a fantastic job.
awesome. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead, Melissa.
That's okay. I was just going to make a motion that council authorize the mayor to enter into the rental agreement for the Vokes House.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion by Melissa and a second by Mary. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item H is the approval of an agreement with Linda and Michael Larson. Go ahead, Jennifer.
So staff requests approval to renew the Bonnie Ray House lease agreement. Staff is recommending that the rent remain the same for 2024. We increased the rate last year, $100, bringing the rate to $2,700. $800 of that is deducted for the caretaker duties. The remaining being $1,900 is what they pay for their rent each month. And so staff is requesting council to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement for the Bonnie Ray House rental agreement.
All right, questions for Jennifer on this?
I'd move to approve mayor entered rental agreement with Bonnie, for the Bonnie Ray rental property.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Carrie, a second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Item I tonight is an approval of an ordinance. This would be Mount Vernon Municipal Code 8.60, regulating camping on public property. Kevin Rogerson, our city attorney, is here for this item. Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council before you, which would be ordinance number 3876, is an ordinance of the City of Mount Vernon, Skagit County, Washington, adopting a new chapter 8.60 of the Mount Vernon Municipal Code regarding regulating camping on public property and other matters relating thereto. Unregulated camping on public property, which we have experienced in the city, including public rights-of-way, parks, trails, city parking lots, and other public property, is and has been a public health and safety concern, including criminal activity, theft and drug use, littering, public exposure to hazardous and dangerous materials, including drug paraphernalia, used needles, biohazards, damage to public property, and it does interfere with other intended uses such as the daily operation of the city, schedule and permitted events in areas parking lots, recreational activities, pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic, and other public uses that the property is intended for. I want to be clear that this is not a ban. It is not a categorical exclusion of people who do not have available shelter from public property. If that condition does occur, there will be public property afforded to them. What this ordinance does do is it places time, place, and manner restrictions on camping on public property to mitigate foreseeable and demonstrated public safety impacts associated with such conduct. If there does exist circumstances where shelter is not available, the ordinance cannot be enforced against people who are camping in your right-of-way. The ordinance prohibits camping or storing personal property on public property when there is available overnight shelter. Available overnight shelter is specifically defined in your ordinance, and it includes that it must be a shelter space open to the particular individual experiencing homelessness, that the city must confirm that the space is available to that person at no cost, that it is located nearby as defined in your ordinance, 20 miles radius from your city hall, and that it is accessible to the person either by public transportation, city-provided transportation, or vehicle for hire at no cost to that person. It further addresses the fact that shelters may have restrictions based on a member's sex, length of stay, marital status, disability, or other rules that could interfere with the person's constitutional rights. When such rules preclude the use of that particular shelter, then it is not available under the definition proposed in this ordinance. If there is no available shelter, camping prohibition on city rights-of-way will not be enforced. It is precluded by operation of law in the text in this ordinance. If shelter is available and confirmed by staff, open to that particular individual experiencing homelessness, it must be offered to the person experiencing homelessness and then refused before the ordinance may be enforced when camping on the right-of-way. The penalty provision for this ordinance is a simple misdemeanor, which is a maximum 90 days in jail, $1,000 fine, or both. For a first offense, the maximum financial penalty is $100 that the court could impose upon a finding of guilt. The court is authorized to allow community service in lieu of paying any fine. The conclusion and findings of staff is that this has been given careful review and consideration. We'd ask the council to find it's in the best interest of the city of Mount Vernon will be served by adoption of this ordinance, and that regulatory requirements established by this ordinance are necessary and sufficiently narrowly tailored for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and welfare of your citizens. If you have any questions, I believe we do have PD here, and of course, I would be happy to entertain any questions as well.
All right, questions?
I
Mark,
just have
yes,
a
sir?
comment. Kevin, first off, I have to commend you on being able to put this ordinance together. It's something the city council asked you to look into. You did the legal background, the legal research, so that we weren't passing something that wasn't constitutional, and also you looked at similar ordinances, how the judges' rulings have come down, and that really helped you narrowly tailor this so that it was constitutional, it would hold up in a court of law, but it would also give some of the most vulnerable in our community services that they need. So really, it's just an extra tool in the quiver for our law enforcement and iOS. So I just wanted to commend you and your staff on the job that you did, because you made sure that we were being compassionate and also following all the laws that have been put in place either by statute or by judges' rulings. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any questions? Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you as well. I appreciate that. I spent a lot of time researching the topic and sent a detailed list of questions to Kevin, and appreciate the thoughtful answers. And it sounds like there might have been some changes from the ordinance as a result of that, so I appreciate that. I do want to explain to folks that I'm going to be voting no tonight, not because I don't believe the ordinance is well considered. We've had a lot of time to think about it, and it's a necessary tool. I'm voting no because I'm unclear how the new regulations will be implemented, what kind of public education is being provided, what kind of training is being set up and provided to the police department, and what kind of coordination has happened with external service providers. I do have a lot of faith in the Mount Vernon Police Department and our legal department, and I know this has been well thought out, and I'm looking forward to learning as we implement and hearing how it's going. So thank you.
Other questions from council?
I got just one.
Go for it, Gary.
Under A, 8.6020, it says available overnight shelter. Well, if that tent goes up at 10 o'clock in the morning, is there an issue with it? You have to wait till it starts turning into night because it's gonna be dealing with the overnight shelter? Or is it, when you pitch the tent, no matter what time of day, it becomes an issue?
Good question. What the standard here would be is that if you're camping for the purpose of or in such a way as to facilitate remaining overnight or parking a camper in a manner for the purpose of remaining overnight, then it's prohibited. So what will happen is that the law enforcement will inquire and build a case to see just exactly what the conditions are surrounding the particular structure. Is it there for camping as defined, or is it there for a temporary basis? What we're trying to do is narrowly tailor this ordinance to the conduct of camping, overnight, shelter, more permanency than just a brief respite.
I would clarify too, Gary, that there are shelters that are open all day long.
Okay.
So there is the ability at any time of day to approach someone and to be able, if a shelter bed is available in one of those particular areas, that would be offered. Yes, there are some shelters that are only overnight too, as well, but that's not the overall scope is that there's beds available and access 24 hours a day.
Great. Thank you.
So this ordinance couldn't be imposed unless there was shelter available.
Correct.
or if it was deemed somebody needed drug treatment or alcohol treatment or something out. There has to be some services available for them to go to. And those shelters could be anything from First Steps to Friendship House, or possibly even a motel room that was available under a voucher system. I think I think this is a tool in the quiver for our first responders too, and I think it's an opportunity to provide services that some of those folks on this that are most vulnerable really need. And I think it's important that we pass this ordinance. I think it'll start that process of healing for some folks. So I would move the adoption of ordinance 3876.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mark, a second by Melissa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Moving on to item J tonight is the approval of an agreement with North Star Leadership Team of Skagit County. And again, Kevin is here for this item. Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. While I'm here to introduce it, I will just say that I think the executive mayor is carrying most of the water. I'll be the bucket, but she will be most of the water. This is really the child of the executives from your local jurisdictions. But by way of background, since July of 2022, our chief executive, elected officials in Burlington, Mount Vernon, Cedar Woolley, and of course, which would be your mayors and a county commissioner, have been working collaboratively and informally to re-examine current systems of care in Skagit County and to look at and pursue available avenues to render more effective and collaborative cross-jurisdictional efforts. They've named this group informally as the North Star Leadership Team. We have asked respectively that their legislative authorities formalize this through an interlocal agreement which you have before you, which is allowed under a statute cited here that allows the establishment of such collaborative non-entity boards. The agreement, again, doesn't create a separate legal or administrative entity. I think it's very important to know. It doesn't delegate any power or authority to this board or party. It doesn't include any authority to enter into contracts, bind any party to any policy recommendation, reached by this team, hire employees, serve as a substitute for your authority as each local jurisdictions and your legislative processes to make policy, including planning, development, regulations. This is just a recognition and a formalization of a working group. It's purely advisory. It's limited to its scope of work set forth in the agreement before you. Any advice or recommendations of this team board is not required. It is simply that. It's advice. Take it or leave it. But we would ask that you formalize this to assure the continuity of a group that has reached certain measures of success where no other group has before. And I think it's important to recognize that. But I defer to the mayor.
That was excellent, Kevin. I would just say, yes, for council, that it's not lost on the group that's currently in place, that this is unprecedented collaboration. Humble leaders, strong leaders, though, wanting to do the right thing, rejecting grandstanding and partisan politics and working for the community, taking on some very significant challenges of behavioral health, homelessness, and housing. And so we felt very strongly that to establish at least this agreement would help keep continuity as leadership changes. So, any questions about it? All right. Would you like to take action?
Yes. I'm not quite sure what to, is it a motion to approve the interlocal agreement? Move to approve the interlocal agreement, formally establishing the North Star Leadership Team.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. A motion by Mary and a second by Iris. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Item K tonight is the approval of an agreement for Gelada. And I think Lieutenant Mike Moore is going to come up in the absence of Police Chief Chris Kamek, who I do believe is watching virtually. So hopefully we're making him proud on this. This is a behavioral health records management agreement. Speaking of successes coming out of the North Star Leadership Team, this is one of them. So go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Bring before a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Skagit County for the use of Gelada Behavioral Health Records Management System, which I talked about last week during public safety. Gelada is a proprietary-based software system designed to connect behavioral health service providers with each other to productively manage and support individual needed services. Skagit County Public Health agreed to fund and manage the system, providing individual agencies with spoke access to the system. For the past year, the City of Mount Vernon Police Department, the City Attorney's Office have been working with Skagit County and representatives from the Gelada network to construct services offer including privacy firewalls and pertinent information access privileges. Gelada offers the ability to transform the disconnected patchwork of service providers into a coordinated network. That will provide more effective level of service, care delivery by outreach personnel, law enforcement, fire, and EMS. Based on the above information, staff is requesting City Council approve authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Skagit County for the use of Gelada Behavioral Health Records Management System. And I could probably answer any questions you may have with Gelada in mind.
All right. Questions for Mike on this?
What flavor does it come in?
As my first slide last week, the difference between the two.
I'd like to make a motion, or to move that we authorize the mayor to enter an agreement with Skagit County for use of Gelada Behavioral Health Records Management System. I'd also like to say, this is huge to me. It's like the biggest step forward to get all the people, actors, if you will, on the same page.
Oh, it's
So-
gonna be a big step.
I'm so excited to have this, and I'm delighted that we're going to move forward with it.
I appreciate the support.
All right. Thank you, Mary, for the motion. Iris, was that a second? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mike, just before you leave, and for Kevin, our Police Department, City Attorney's Office, Skagit County Public Health, Skagit County IT, and all the attorneys have worked really, really hard on this for probably nearly a year. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. All right, that completes our regularly scheduled agenda items. I'll ask our city attorney if we have a need for an executive session this evening.
No.
All right, with that, we'll be adjourned from city council meeting at 8:16, and we'll be re-adjourning our committee meeting in about 5 minutes. So.
If
You
you
can
feel
decide.
like it.
If we feel like it.